Welcome back here to KRON 4 News at 9 o'clock tonight. Congressional Democrats continue to try and get President Biden's massive agenda passed, but they're being held up by mostly members of their own party.
Joining us live to talk more about exactly where things stand is California Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She sits on the House Appropriations Committee. She's in charge of all the money and all the stuff like that. Here to talk about where things stand right now and how things are going to move forward in getting these bills passed. Congresswoman Lee, thanks so much for spending time with us here on KRON 4 News at 9.
Nice being with you this evening.
So can you tell us where things stand right now? We know that right now we have kind of two big bills we're talking about here. We have this infrastructure bill for $1.5 million or $1.2 million, and we also have $1 trillion. My apologies. Thank you.
It's a little bit of a difference.
It's a lot of money, and we're also talking about this $3 trillion bill as well to get the economy back on track. Where do things stand right now with getting both of these passed?
Sure, and one of the things that I really hesitate to talk about, because we don't know how much these bills are actually going to be negotiated for in terms of the dollar amount. But what we do know is that there are priorities in terms of the investments which the president campaigned on, how he won, because people believed that he was going to deliver for them. For example, in the Build Back Better bill, of course, we have investments for childcare. You know, so many women want to get back into the workforce. I think it's nearly 2 million women, but they can't do that. And guess why? Childcare is much, much too expensive. Secondly, housing. And I serve on the Budget Committee, and so it was the Budget Committee which moved forward on the Build Back Better bill several weeks ago. But in our Budget Committee, we approved the housing provisions, which allowed for us to address the housing crisis finally in a comprehensive way in terms of addressing homelessness, making sure the unsheltered people have good, decent, safe housing, pathway to home ownership, looking at public housing, how to increase vouchers, all of the necessities that we need, not only in my district and in California, but throughout the country, because we are in a housing crisis. Also, we have some key provisions on the climate emergency, and it is an emergency. Look at the wildfires, hurricanes. The planet is hot right now, and we have to address this. This is an emergency, so we put resources in and strategies to address the climate crisis. Also, good paying union jobs. We've invested in making sure that good paying jobs with benefits would be provided for care workers, people who take care of our elders, people who need a living wage, who need to make sure that their families, they're essential workers. And I think somehow didn't recognize that caregivers are essential workers, but they are, and they deserve a living wage. And our elders deserve to be able to live in their homes as they age, and they deserve decent health care. So there are many provisions in this bill that we're talking about that the public embraces. And finally, I'll just say that's why I'm really happy that the president is out there talking about this, because the public, all the polls show the public embraces it. They voted for the president. And also Secretary Marcia Fudge was in my district as well as in San Francisco in the Speaker's district to talk about the housing provisions of the Build Back Better bill and how important they are for us to keep them intact and to move forward and negotiate this bill. No one said it was going to be easy. It's not easy, but I'm confident we're going to get it done.
Yeah, President Biden had said he didn't know if he could get it done. And some of the issue is that Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kristen Sinema of Arizona have kind of been holding this back, the negotiations. Have you been talking to them? What kind of conversations are you having with them to try to move this bill forward? And is there a new timeline to get this passed? What's the deadline?
Well, I haven't talked with them directly, but I have met with the president 2 times now in terms of how we move forward on these negotiations. And of course, we need to do this immediately. People need to know that these investments are going to make their lives better. And so the quicker we do it, the better. Of course, we're looking at October 31st as a deadline, and we want to meet that. But we have to make sure that we insist that these negotiations don't leave anyone behind. And so, yes, we have a deadline and we're trying to meet that, but we've got to make sure that the 2 senators who are holding it up, that we understand who they want to leave behind. Is it children? You know, do they want to give up the child tax credit, which is a middle class tax cut and lifting children out of poverty? Do they want to get rid of the housing provisions? And we don't know what they want to get rid of. We know Senator Manchin wants to get rid of the climate provisions, and we're going to fight like you know what to make sure we get the strongest climate provisions in. And so we have to see where they fall and how we get to where we need to be. So we have to do this expeditiously, but it has to be done right.
So Senator Sinema has told House Democrats that she will not support the $3 trillion plan until Congress passes the $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan, which is bipartisan. Both Senator Manchin and Sinema have urged the House to vote on the infrastructure deal for $3.5 trillion and to have that clear the Senate first. So which would come first if you're trying to ease this backlog of trying to get something done?
Sure. Well, if you remember, and I want to go back to when this original arrangement or deal was made several months ago, and I support the infrastructure bill, and the agreement was that we needed both bills and we needed them to move forward. That was the deal that was made when you saw them all come out of the White House and talk about that in their press conference. And so whatever happened with Senator Manchin and Sinema to renege on that deal got us to this point where we are now. And that therein lies the difficulty. We are going to move both of these bills as that original agreement. We can't have just one bill without the other. Look at what the infrastructure bill entails, and we have to make sure that we fix our roads and bridges and have the hard infrastructure bill, which is going to create millions of jobs. And we have to have workforce training, which is in the Build Back Better bill, so that and retraining, so that those who have been shut out of the building of the infrastructure in our country are eligible and have the skills and the training for the first bill to be able to get those jobs. And so they work in tandem, they work hand in hand. And you can't tell me that we're going to leave children behind or seniors behind and only pass a hard infrastructure bill and leave everyone else behind. So the agreement was early on, several months ago, that these bills would be worked through as two bills as a package, and that's what we intend to do.
Do you plan to push this forward through reconciliation?
Well, Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, we're working on that now. They're working on that and trying to figure out what the dynamics are. You know, the votes are very close. We're a very slim margin in the Senate and in the House, quite frankly. And so it just depends on how the negotiations move forward. It's hard to say right now how that's going to happen in terms of reconciliation until we know if there's consensus about what we intend to invest in and who we're going to invest in, and who, if it gets down to it, who the two senators do not want to invest in to leave behind. And we're sticking firm with, we want to make sure that we leave no one behind. This costs zero in terms of tax dollars, and in fact that everyone pays their fair share, and the public wants that. They've said that, and that's what we're working on, to try to get the president's economic agenda, and that's what it is. It's an economic agenda passed.
$3 trillion is what it entails, but Senator Manchin has been firm that he wants no more than $1.5 trillion in spending. So how do you make that happen? I guess with these discussions and ongoing negotiations, how do you cut $1.5 trillion from a deal?
Well, that's what, listen, we started at $6 trillion, right, which is really what we need. Then we negotiated down to $3.5 trillion, which is really what now we need. Now, within the context of the negotiations, again, not talking about where we're going to fall, we don't know what we will end up with. And that's why I think it's important to look at the values that are embedded in the Build Back Better bill, and look at how we're going to make sure that the public understands that the public needs to weigh in with the senators and to say, look, you can't leave children behind, or look, you can't leave our climate burning and in crisis, or look, you've got to address our caregiving givers and care economy, or look, you've got to address the housing crisis, or look, you've got to address the equity issues that are embedded in the Build Back Better bill, because so much of what's in the bill have to do with gender and racial and economic equity. So we need to know what they're willing to give up and how we end up negotiating that dollar amount. But we're standing firm in terms of where we think the country needs to go in terms of what the president agreed to and campaigned on, and that is those provisions that are in the Build Back Better bill, which we voted for out of the House through the Budget Committee on the floor.
All right, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, thank you so much for your time here on KRON 4 News at 9 tonight. We'll be right back.